We are going to talk about how do community leads fit into the overall organizational chart, as well as what are growth opportunities when you're working for a big company like Freshworks or even Facebook. Like, what does that look like in terms of growth? And then I'll also add some perspective about how Facebook is thinking about hiring community leads even within our organization, and what roles they can play. And we want to then focus on what is uniquely Indian. Like, we are Desi. So what is uniquely Indian? What is uniquely Desi about community and community leads? Where are the specific skills that we need for this context and for this market? And then we'll have some fun with some rapid fire. As always, I invite you all to be active in the chat, ask questions. I'm going to note them down and I'll try to throw them at our esteemed panelists. So we would love to hear from you as well. This is super interactive. As you can tell, I have an American accent, and so us Americans, we like small talk. So I want to see you guys active in the chat doing your community thing. This is not all talk and you listening. This is a global conversation, so we'd love to have you. So let me just kick it into high gear, and I want to have these wonderful folks introduce themselves and talk about what is the niche of community that you sit in right now? And so we understand the context of how you're answering questions. So let me kick it over to Anna. Anna, if you give us a short introduction and tell us what is that place of community that you sit in and how will you be answering questions today?
Sure. I mean, that was a lovely context setting. Thanks, Avni, and lovely to be on the show as well. I think all of you know Avni already introduced me. So I'm working for Freshworks. I'm currently building community and advocacy for the company. And today, it's such a hot topic, right? Everybody wants to know. In any stream of work, I think everybody wants to know, okay, what next for me? Like, how do I progress in my career? And all the more in community, because it's such a niche space, not just in India, but I think all over the world. Everybody's figuring things out. So I'm super kicked about talking about this topic. So I'm going to bring in the whole B2B angle, and where does community really sit in a hypergrowth startup environment? Freshworks is still, in the hypergrowth phase. So any company who's in a similar journey, or if you're just starting out, I know India is seeing such a huge uproar of new startups and whatnot, and companies are starting community very, very early on. In fact, even before they build the product, they're actually building communities. A lot of startups today in India. So somebody is starting off your career, what next? How can you sort of grow as the company grows along with you? So I think that's the perspective I'm hoping to bring to the table today.
Mentioned hyper growth, just even from 1 week to the next, especially if you're in the quasi tech sector, things change so fast. Yeah. And so those of us that are in these roles need to be able to move just as quickly. So thank you for that lovely introduction of yourself, Anna. And let me kick it over to Arbab. Tell us more about a short introduction. And then what is sort of this place that you sit at in terms of this career conversation for community?
So first of all, thank you, Avni, for introduction and little introduction, and thank you, CMX, for inviting me. So I want to mention certain thing about me which I have been doing into the community space. So I am most probably the oldest person in here who is into community. I have been building community since 14 years now. And from the time of Orkut, I have been building community, but I realized later phase of my life that I can also teach community. So from last 4 years, I am teaching community to my students, and I have made a framework for that, and I am the first Indian to do so, to teach community, of course, right? I have been there was last month I gave one TEDx talk, and I have a variety of topics to choose from digital marketing spaces, but I choose to talk about community because I love community so much. So I wanted to my first TED talk or any talk on international platform to do that. Apart from that, I have been invited by NASSCOM, which is oldest community in India if we talk about businessmen, and Head Start, again one of the oldest community, business community, to teach communities. So these are the things I have been doing in my life, and it's like community is kind of in my blood. So we can say that that I have been even if we see look at my entire business, it is built on communities, be it classroom, be it teaching style, be it that anything I do, it's based on community. So that's a little bit about me, and I will be talking about education prospect of community, how to that if you are a builder, how to build community. I will be talking about that more, and of course about the career.
Thank you so much for introducing yourself in a really comprehensive way. And I've known you for a while, and everything he says is true, guys. So if you haven't gotten to meet and talk to Arbab, please do that. Go to Noida, see him, go to Upskill, take some classes. It will be fun for everyone. And so I want to jump right into maybe us giving a little bit of background as to how we all broke into the community space ourselves. And likely we're going to have a wide variety of stories there. So Anna, let me kick it to you. How did you break into this space?
I think, I mean, sometimes I wonder, like, okay, where did it all begin, right? Like, how did I even get into community? Because I've been with Freshworks for almost like 10 years now. And and back when I joined, it was called Fresh Desk, and we were just 40 of us, and now we have close to 5,000 people globally. And I was right out of college, so I didn't know anything about community, to be honest. Like, of course, I knew what it meant, but in a B2B setting, obviously not. And back in 2012, I think India was just warming up to the whole tech space, and it's been very organic. But I've always been somewhere in the whole GTM and customer success and that space. So I think progressing into community was very, very organic. And like I said, it just happened as the company grew, and as we realized, like, we've always been doing community. Like, I think it's a wonderful thing for you to say that community is built into Freshworks DNA, which is very, very true. But I think after we reached a certain stage, we realized, okay, now it's time for us to actually carve out like a separate org in itself, and maybe like put in more resources, more time, more everything into like doing everything 10x than what we were doing initially. So I think uh, probably I was doing it before we formally announced that, okay, Anna is building community. But I think it's only been like last 2-3 years when we formally announced, like, okay, let's build community officially. But yeah, I think it was very organic. There was no like one day I woke up and realized, okay, I need to do community today. It was never that. So
Start with the title, right, Anna? Like, it was one of the many hats that you wore at Freshworks in those early days, and many of us who have been in the startup space understand what that feels like, until it sounds like you realized and the company realized the importance of core function, understanding it more deeply, and dedicating resources to it. Yeah, love that.
I think I just want to add, like, even like some of the customers even like come back and say, like, now they know that I'm sort of heading community, I'm doing a lot of different programs, but they actually come back and say, oh, we remember you, like, you used to moderate and like respond to our questions like 7-8 years ago. And I'm like, yeah, that's the same me, like, but I've sort of grown in the career. So that actually, like, it's testament for you don't just end up being a community moderator, you can actually grow and move up the ladder. So yeah.
You sort of become one of the faces that's on screen, or people see you typing or responding, you have that trust and can gain that trust and can grow into different things because you've been that person for people. That's super cool, and I can also relate a lot to that. That's a part of my journey as well. Arbab, how did you break into this space?
So like many of you, that in your life you need some escape, right? So for that, finding that escape, I joined some community in Orkut, and I joined that community, and I start becoming a member, interacting, and like many Indian people, I was a kind of geek, and I was into ethical hacking. I even won some of the tournaments into that, right, in ITs and all those things in my college time. So I wanted an escape for maybe that to finding myself and to finding different ideas of myself, right. So I joined a community at Orkut. From the at Orkut, I started learning about interacting about. I made a lot of friends. Even 14 years ago, whoever were my friend in Orkut time, they still have that in my contact, and I am the part of that community. Still, I am the part of the community. In fact, from the 1 decade, I am moderating that community. So it started like that, and after that, I think I started building community around 2006, 2007, 2008, and I realized that around 2012, 13, I realized that it is a very powerful thing to do. Right, it took some time to me to understand, and when I start my company around 2017, the first module I check out was the community building, because I know that in my sphere, like in my area of digital marketing, the training, nobody is talking about community. Nobody is. So I designed everything from the classroom. Classroom is a community-led classroom. Cohort word comes later than that. I started community-led class, and then after that, 2018, 19, you heard that cohort-based learning, which is of course community-based learning. So I have built entire my property around that community. For example, if the first student which I thought, right, he is still in touch with me because of the community, and he helps his juniors to that to in his or her job profile, or maybe in their businesses as well. So I made that community as well, alumni community as well. So it is entirely based on. And if we talk about a classroom and a community led classroom, there is a lot of difference. In classroom, a teacher is actually the person who acts like a leader, but the real discussion is not happening around that it should happen, but it's not happening because there is a some sort of hierarchy is there, right. But in community led teaching, the wall of hierarchy is a little bit less. So the teacher and student have a very good discussion, and my belief system is that with the discussion you learn more. So I also said that I have created a positive place for you where you can ask any question, right. So that's how I started in community, and that's how I have been going with the community as well.
We'll bring up something that you said when we get to the conversation about what is uniquely Indian, but I will say it quickly here. I think that for any of us that plan to grow in our leadership pathway, making sure that those who come after us have a positive environment where they can fail and and still feel good about themselves is really important, because that's typically not the way Indian companies run, right? And then lead with that. But I like how you really changed that, and I can see that because listen, anytime Arbab posts something on Facebook, something that he's doing, something that he was involved in, you can see a lot of his students who will respond and get really enthusiastic about it, and so that's the type of and I think that was important. So thank you for sharing that. I love this community-led classroom concept. And one thing I want to say about Anna and Arbab. Anna, I've only known you for this week, but I hope to know you much more. But these two folks are truly doing this from the heart. It's a part of their DNA. Right? So it's not just a job function, it's literally who they are as people. And so with this type of community function, you have to walk the talk. You've got to believe in it. You've got to believe in connecting people. You have to believe in the power of scaling communication. You have to really believe all of that. And so you both exemplify that so well. Highlight that we've had some comments in the chat, and Madhurima was saying that she started in program management and the learner experience at her edtech company, and she just sort of had an aha moment. There's really more to education and careers than just delivering the courses. You have to bring people together. They have to learn from one another, and that peer-to-peer reinforcement of what they're doing sounds like it was really key to her particular company and situation. I love that. And I just want to add in, so I come from a different space. My space is international development, what we call Samaj Seva here in India. And so doing that work, you're always, marching the streets, you're having strikes, you're having community meetings. Everything was focused around community and community building, starting with women's self-help groups that helped women in villages save money and then learn skills and build an income and then fight for their rights. So for me, the journey really started in seeing how this offline base building and community building that organizations like Seva and other people were doing in India, how that became foundational for change. Right? So in order to change something, you have to lift everyone's voice, give them a safe space to be able to speak up, because sometimes individually it's too scary to do that. You don't want to be targeted. And then bringing all those individual voices together for collective action. And so that was like ding, 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 ding. Once we moved into the digital space and there were digital communities like Facebook groups and whatnot, moving into that space, after which I started in that space too. So I love how we're all sort of connecting the dots here. And from that beginning moment to then, it's really interesting how we've come to these places that we're sitting at now. So I want to ask you to, where do you think there were like 2 points in your career where you had to rapidly level up your skills, and then because of that you got to grow or you got more opportunities? So let me kick it to Anna for that.
Yeah, I think I think you touched upon it briefly, right? I think it's all about connecting with people and driving things, and that's not just with the community members, especially in a B2B setting. You need to have those relationships going with so many people internally, and I mean, you cannot be, the community cannot be successful if you don't enable other teams that's around you to be successful through the community. I think in a B2B setting, it's all about, okay, how can I help product marketing? How can I help sales drive more revenue? How can I help customer success retain customers? So I think for me, understanding how these different functions work, and how can I take community, go knock on their doors and say, hey, I know this is your agenda, this is your goal. Now let me tell you how community can help you drive that. I think I mean, not just me. I think the entire team is able to do a lot of things we are doing today. We have a good understanding or a visibility into how the org comes together and all the different functions sort of fits in like a puzzle, right? I think that was very important in my career, and I think I'm constantly learning, like understanding, okay, how digital marketing works, like how can we work with digital marketing to drive more, let's say, leads, and can we explore community as another channel to drive user acquisition. So many things. I think that was a huge level up for me, from coming from a customer success background. I knew everything about customers, but understanding how internally like different functions work, that was probably a huge value add in my like community building journey at Freshworks.
And it sounds like really going to people and saying, hey, let me help you. And then them seeing the success of that opened many other pathways for you in this function.
Yeah, it wasn't easy for sure, obviously, especially when we are at a stage where people are coming to us and I'm like, hey, you know what, community is so successful, we want to do this, we want to do that, what can we do, like how can we explore some other campaign, like there's so many inbound interests coming in. But initially it was just us like going and knocking on everyone's doors and say, hey, we're trying to do this, can we partner with you, can we like get some share of some big bet campaign you're doing, like let's try and explore, like do some experiments. So it wasn't easy, but it was interesting and like a good challenge for sure. So lots of learnings from what we've done.
Sick. Arbab, what about you? How did you level up a skill or learn something that helped propel you in this journey that you've had?
So first of all, let us understand one thing, that before leveling up skills, you need to have some acceptance. Like you are a learner, right? So for many times it happens, our ego and our mind blocks that, okay, I know everything, I should not level up. So first level of anything like skilling up, you need to accept that you have some mistake and there's opportunity of learning as well, right? So when I start building community, it will take, that it took some time. It took some time to understand. Like I a lot of people are connecting with me. Whenever I go to India, I can meet my friends and all those things. They are better friends of me than the real friends I have in my the offline world. So I was not understanding what is actually happening. What is that one thing which is actually connecting them with me, right? So slowly I started understand that it is something called empathy, and that empathy is actually that connecting with me with those people. So the first thing I learned about community, I skilled about being empathetic, and at the same time being a little diplomat, right? So because that you cannot hurt everyone, right? So I have to be talked like that, right? Now, since I am from the marketing background, I'll always tell my students that before thinking about marketing mindset, you have to think two layer of up. Means that you have to first think about the user perspective. Exactly same thing happening here. You need to think about what is the condition of that person who raised the question. Do not react too quickly. Listen to that person. Listen to whole scenario. Then after that, you can again, the second layer of thinking will be as a entrepreneur. Why entrepreneur? Here matlab, here I am. If I'm saying entrepreneur, it means that a solution provider, not a person who sells their services and all those things, but more on the side of the solution provider. So you need to think like a user, put yourself in their shoe. Empathy is going to help you into that, and you can practice day to day life. You do not have to be mean to somebody and talk to somebody like nicely and all those things. You can have, right, being a, if just be a nice human being, you will learn about empathy. The second thing is think about the solution. So for that, you need to consume a lot of things. You need to consume a lot of things, lot of content. You need to read, you need to meet a lot of people, you need to sit together and do a lot of brainstorming before come to that picture. Like if somebody is asking me some question, can I have a solution for that? Can I have an optimal solution for that? Can I have a solution which is temporarily or permanent, right? So thinking like that is always going to help, right? Thinking like this always going to help. So empathy, thinking like a solution provider, these are the two things I leveled up into my that community drive. And being a little diplomat works, right? So that also I have learned.
Works wonders in India for sure. If you can say hard in a nice way, then that's an incredible skill. I like this also. This is like a paradigm shift, right? Is this idea of empathy, but not empty empathy. A lot of people use empathy and it's a buzzword. It's become sexy. Like forget that. Screw that. Real empathy is that the deep listening that I've seen you do. You and I have had so many conversations where we've just been able to open up and from our perspective functions, someone working at Facebook and then someone running this training academy, you wouldn't expect that open type of conversation to happen, but because you lead with empathy and are so just real, it facilitates a much deeper connection much faster, which gets the job done. And so definitely vouching for his empathy skills and this diplomacy, because you've told me hard things before, which I have appreciated.
Clear about in this session that diplomacy works, right?
Diplomacy works.
So it looks, you might look that a very negative person if you say that I am a very that a diplomat, but it's a very essential part of community building.
Absolutely. And I think
cannot deny it.
there's something about remaining cool in the face of conflict when you're in a community facing role that oftentimes you are interacting with the public, right? For many of us, internally or externally, whatever that public
Right.
is for you, to be able to coolly and calmly get to the bottom of things using the skill of empathy and then respond with, if there's something hard that you need to say in a diplomatic way, is an essential skill. And it's people call these things soft skills, and I say that they're life skills, right? This is an important on us, our journey as humans. It makes us better of how you at that. Beneath is saying he has reached to the P stage in diplomacy at the moment. Beneath, we'll practice together. I love this. That's a great comment. I'd love to know what the P stage is, and I'm hoping that you get to L very, very, very soon. I think for me, so leveling up for me, and guys, just some quick context about my journey. I started out with Samaj Seva and international development. I moved into starting my own startup in between, but sort of starting my own startup, and then went to Facebook, right? This like massive, humongoid company that is the platform many of the communities that all of us run. And I think what was most important for me to learn as a person who has like a counseling and sort of leads with empathy as just a human being, I needed to professionalize myself. So when I started documenting experiments, so I was lean startup methodologying everything that I was doing, but I wasn't writing things down and publishing them. So creating a paper trail that people could follow was really, really important and helped me grow. And I think the second thing was somebody told me something, and you all who are in the sector might agree or disagree, and I want to hear in the comments if you agree or disagree. Somebody told me, Avni, people who go on stage and speak about their startups are not the people that are actually doing the work. So when I was a startup founder, I would get invited to all these women entrepreneurship, this thing and that thing, and like, you know, Arbab and I have met at a couple of events before, and Anna, I guarantee same space, but maybe didn't know each other. Neha, probably you and I too. But eventually you sit on enough of these stages, you see the same people, right? And B, you're telling the same story. And somebody just said, Avni, when are you doing this? When are you doing the work? When are you talking to, when are you, hacking away at an experiment that you want to try? Because I see you everywhere. And I was like, you're right. Maybe this is taking me away from really hustling for this business. So once I learned to balance being that extroverted public face, right, the community face of my platform, which was a counseling platform, with actually sitting internally, documenting things, making sure experiments are running, coaching and counseling the employees, then I felt that my skills really started to improve. And anytime I went on stage, I was better to listen to me. It wasn't just, flowery things that I was saying about women's entrepreneurship and all this other stuff. So I see some comments, sounds familiar. Sam, partially disagree. Tell me why. Yeah, so everyone has a spectrum of influence. So tell me a little bit more about it, because I do realize that sometimes going out and being the public face helps you grow, helps your company grow, but then like, where do you stop? Because, somebody like me can just run their mouth their whole life and never get any work done. So tell me a little bit more. And in the meantime, I want to jump into going deep with Arbab. Arbab, you've been training so many community managers, community team leaders. Raja was talking about his experience and at his company, who sort of trained under you. I want to know, so firstly, what are you focusing on in this training? Like, what are the things that you're teaching people as core skills?
So the first thing, the first thing people do not realize about upskill, that entering into upskill is very easy, but that passing out of the from the upskill is little bit hard. Why it is hard? Because the first thing we teach is being patient, because that is the most essential skill for a digital marketer as well as for a community builder as well. So let's come to the community aspect. What is the things I teach apart from being community and all those things? General thing like rules and regulation is there and all those things. Apart, two things I actually focus on. First is about the members, the type of members, and the second thing is about the content. Because I say that engagement is the marry between the the members and the content, right? So that's what engagement is, one of the the thing community builder too, right? So apart from that, I also teach them about history of community, how community evolve, and that why it is very important, because we do not realize that before even speaking we live in community. Before even writing, we invented the writing, we were living in a community. People do not realize that. So we have to go back to the, if we want to learn community, we have to go back to the our old ways first. Then we have to come back to the present, but offline. All around us there is community, be it religious community, be it fan community, be it that book club, chess, cricket, maybe our that kind of thing, right? So there are a lot of communities around us, and we are, as a human being, a part of different communities in our life, right? So teaching them this history and all those things actually opens up their mind to understand, okay, we already have been living in a community, we do not know that, we do not see it that by that way, right? Then I come to between the community, I have a framework. In that framework, a lot of things is there, but two main part: members. So if you build an online community, I divide members into four parts. One is called sleeper, and that sleeper, we have two kind of member. One is absolute sleeper, and one is semi sleeper. It means that they join the community but they do not actually engage with. One of them is liking the post but they do not actually comment on, and one is to absolutely dead. Second is engager, who comment but never produce any kind of content. Third is pusher, who produce content. And fourth is enabler, which is that community enablers, moderators, volunteers, all those things. And I also teach them the difference between content, a high quality content, and a content which we call it as a filler content. Because again, people come to the community to engage with the content. If there is no content, then they will get bored. And high quality content we cannot produce each and every day, because it's a that it's a very research process and all those things. So to one content to engage them, one content to give them empower them. So these kind of thing I actually teach, and this kind of thing works really well because of that it's works really well. I gave one example, one very good example of hotel. The content business of the hotel business is the same. One day you go to the hotel, and in that hotel you wanted to eat your favorite snack. That hotel owner says that no, we do not have your favorite snack. Yesterday we cooked that snack. Do you want that? Since it's not fresh, you are not going to eat it, right? The second day you come, same thing. We do not build, make any that snack. We have a snack day before yesterday. You do not, you kept denying. But at the same time, since you are hungry, you want to eat that snack. You go somewhere else and eat it. Same with the content. If the content is not new, people already consume the content. They will, that they will come to you and see that this is the old content. There is no old content, and slowly they will shift toward another community or another space as well. So we need to think around that as well.
Love that. And I'm getting people to answer which one of the four types of community members they are in the chat. So you'll have some additional data for you in a bit. We've got people who are engagers coming into engager mode. I think depending on the community, some communities I'm a sleeper, and some communities I'm an enabler or a pusher. Depends on what the community is.
your role keep changing.
Yeah.
And and I also said that there is one ego in community builder, that I will engage to my community, I will not engage to another community, right? I
Mm.
have seen in Indian community builders, that is a very wrong way to actually go for. They already build a network for you, right? They already build a network for you, another community. Be a member of that community, share your thought, and ultimately you will get your members in your community as well. So you know that apart from being your community engaging, you should also engage in other community as well. So that's also helps you grow, you as a person grow, and if you as a person grow, your community will also grow.
I love that. Arbab, we have a question from Renal for you, but I'm
Mhm.
going to wait, Renal, and I'm going to have him answer this at the end, just because I want to make sure that we have time to give this the air that it needs, because this is a pretty specific question. So please just remind me that your question is there. I'm just marking it in my mind. And so I like this take, Arbab, about from what you shared. Out of these things that you talked about, what do you think is super key for people to know to level in a career journey?
Super.
Like, what are the most important things that you think they need to get from your teachings to get to the next level in a career journey?
So if you want to go to the next level of the community, community manager or community enabler, that in your career, the one thing you should be talking about the ROI of the community, and you should be putting the the parameter for that. What is the parameter, how to calculate the return on investment? Because if you have generated a return on investment, it can be, maybe it can be like, for example, Salesforce 80% of their problem solution done by community member. So for them, they do not have to hire more people. It's a ROI, engagement is a ROI for there, right? So it's not money, actually it's something else. It's bigger than that. So you need to first clear cut put a point that what is the ROI you are going to put that there, and you talk about ROI if you want to grow. The first thing I think it should be done. Second thing, that community as a fan group, right? You need to think about that community. How many people you are building who are talking about you outside of your community. There's a one conversation which is inside of your community, and there's one conversation which is outside your community, because that will make you as a that will project you as a brand first, and that will keep that will bring more additional community member as well, right? So a lot of people talk about upskill outside of the community as well, as a community, offline event and all those things. So what is the value you can drive? Third thing, which is very important, which I think it should be a very value driven means different people have different values, right? If it is an entertainment kind of community, entertainment is value. If it is a that digital marketing or education type of, the value driven is very important. How you drive the value, and from that value how you engage the people, and how those people are bringing the change in your community, and you become like from the managed community to semi managed community, right? So these things are very important. I think these 3 4 things are important. Apart from that, there might be some other things, but according to me, that's all.
I love that. And I want to ask a question to everyone that's listening, because we had this conversation prior to this panel. And one question I want to ask you all is, and if you just write this in the chat, do you feel you have the agency? Agency meaning ability, the right to define your ROI within the space that you are working right now? So, just an honest question, because one of the things we were debating is whether community leads even have that right within their organizational structure. So, would love to hear that from those of you that are in the chat and listening right now. And thank you, Arbab, for that, because that was incredibly in depth, and we got a few things, definitely a few gems from that. Now, I want to bring it over to Anna, because at Freshworks, there are so many associated roles for your community team in your organization. And I'd like to understand firstly, like, what could those associated roles be beyond just pure community, and how these people fit into the overall organizational chart at your organization?
Right. I would love to show the org chart if that helps. I mean, it's not the exact chart that we have, but it's more or less like what an ideal space would look like. And um,
Are you able to share, Anna? I think we lost her.
Lost your audio in case you're listening.
I think we lost her.
Kicked out as a presenter. Let's try to give you God mode back.
Oh, I see the presenter mode on. That's really crazy.
Same message I got that you are no longer a host, and I am still there.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Right.
Because I can see her as a host, and her presenter mode is on as well.
Can you please remove her, then add her? It might work.
But I think she's not even there because her audio is also not working, it seems.
She says she's still here. Anna, will you just try leaving and rejoining
Yeah.
again? And then we'll see if we can debug. If not, send your deck to me or Neha, and we'll present for you. You can talk.
Yeah.
I think I got back somehow.
Welcome back.
This is not mine. Right. So I was just saying I'm gonna try and share my screen. Hopefully nothing breaks. Give me a second. So it's just like our ideal org structure, or more or less what we have at Freshworks. Give me a second. Can I share? Because I don't think it's working for me. I'm gonna share that with you, Avni, if that's okay. And you can open that up. I'm really sorry about this.
No, I think, sorry, I think there's some bug with the platform.
Realities of community platforms and the platforms which we do this work on. This is a good conversation for us to have at CMX for sure.
Avni, I don't think I have your email on the group.
It's Avni Parikh, AVANIPAREKH at gmail.com. Or you can just pop a link into our WhatsApp, then I'll open it.
Just it. Yeah, I think you should have it.
Email?
Sorry, I just shared on Gmail.
hasn't come yet, but I'm just refreshing. Arba, one thing I was thinking in the meantime while we're waiting is that since you did this fabulous TEDx talk, if there's a link to it, if you would share that in the chat as well. I was looking. I saw
Right now, they haven't uploaded that TEDx talk because they take around 1 to 2 months to upload. So we do not have that.
Do you mind checking once again, Avni? I think just
We can talk. We can talk about some other things since till it is.
Let me jump into. And in the meantime, let me just quickly talk a little bit. I got it. I said it, and then then it happened.
Good.
All right.
Sorry to keep the audience waiting.
All right. This is the wonderful part of life. Okay. Got it?
Great. Yes.
Awesome.
This is just the first slide. Yeah, so this is like a brief structure of how the community org is structured at Freshworks. So we are a globally dispersed, like distributed team. I have team members in most of the key regions that we have, and we basically like divided that into 4 different pods. So there's a community strategy pod who are more people who have what do I say, more of a program managerial skills, where they think about, okay, how do I go out and acquire new users for the community? How do we take care of their onboarding? And we are a multi-product company, so that adds a lot of complexity. We deal with users of different persona. We deal with people from different backgrounds, different industries. So it is not as simple as it looks. So we have like sub pods within each of these 4 main areas. So there are a bunch of people focusing on acquisition, a few folks entirely focusing on, okay, now that we have users on board, how do we constantly improve the engagement that happens in the community? I think Arbab spoke about like the 4 types of users. So how do we constantly move people up the ladder, like from being a sleeper to actually being an enabler? And how can we drive that through content? And there is a whole piece around community moderation. And we lean on other teams internally as well, like because we really need to depend on the product experts and our support teams. And that's a very good point, right? Like Salesforce today actually sees massive savings in terms of dollars purely by ticket deflection, like where community members are coming forward to help themselves. So much less cost that they spend on answering questions, answering or helping their customers. So there's a whole community moderation piece where we actively like stay on top of everything that's happening in the community, engaging with our users, answering their questions, creating good content that can empower them, that can help them become better at their careers, become better at using our products, and really see ROI, like from a customer's lens as well. They have an investment with Freshworks. They are all people who paying us monthly, who are hoping to make a difference at their companies using our products. So how can we enable them to do that through the content that we provide on the community? And then, of course, there is a whole outside of this, I think outside of the whole asynchronous part of the community, we also want to do other programs around, okay, how do we drive similar to what we're doing here? Like, how do we drive local chapters? How do we drive events? And how do we drive advocacy? Because that's huge. Channel, the community is a huge channel to drive advocacy as well, especially for a B2B brand, like because you really need to keep your CAC low. You really need to drive up your retention, your net retention high. So all of that can be done through, done well if you actually execute it properly on the community. So there is a wing that focuses on these niche experiments and programs, and of course, with all the tools and technology in place, the tech stack is just getting bigger and heavier by the day. So obviously there is like a couple of people focusing on maintaining the tech stack, like identifying new tools and technology that we can leverage on. And I think the operations is, I don't have to talk about it. I think everybody understands how important it is to actually have an operations squad who constantly looks at all the needs from all these other three pods, and making sure that there is internal alignment, there is data flowing between different systems, you're able to make sense out of the data, you're tracking ROI. And that's a great point, right? Like ROI that actually matters to other people. So really making sure that we go back to them and say, hey, you know what, because of community we were able to impact revenue, because of community we are able to drive ticket deflection. And that's when they are also like, oh yeah, that's great, now we can put in more money and more resources and more everything into scaling the team. So I mean it's not easy to do this, but I've personally been fortunate because Freshworks understands this, and there were never any questions asked. So we had the necessary buy-in, but I think it's important now for people to actually talk about the ROI and make sure that they get the necessary buy-ins from leadership. And I think some of this, I hope this helps people, but actually putting this structure and going to the leadership and saying like, hey, this is how we are thinking about scaling community, and this is why we should have resources allocated. So
The internal storytelling piece, the bigger and larger and more complex your organization gets, becomes increasingly important. And you've probably seen that evolve in your time at Freshworks.
absolutely, so true. Yeah, now there's so many more people to get on board. So
Fantastic. And I'm going to stop sharing unless is there anything else that you want to mention using this chart?
no, I think I just wanted us to like see if there's time for us to go in detail into the whole career progression. Maybe we can reshare it when that comes up.
Absolutely. Well, I'm happy to leave it up because I think the next question we had is, you talked a lot about the fluidity of a community team member in joining other teams or growing throughout the larger organization, throughout the company. If you want to take us through, what you've seen and what that could look like within a company that's, like you said, a hyper growth startup like Freshworks, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even when we are looking to hire for the community team, majority of my team members are in India. So obviously, it's been quite a journey to actually hire the right talent to build the team. But I was very conscious about building a truly heterogeneous team in all sense. So I didn't really look for people who've done community in the past. I think it is important, especially again coming back, I can talk for the B2B space, but it is important to get a good mix of people from, let's say, marketing backgrounds, from who've done program management, who've done customer success or sales, who actually understands all the different angles of the business, and bringing all of that into the community space, and then saying, okay, now that we understand all of this, how can we truly deliver a world class program, right? We have content people, so there is a good mix of people from all the different backgrounds that I've been, like, again, fortunate to get in the team. So if you could just go to the next, scroll down a little bit. This is like an operating model of how Freshworks sort of cross-functionally collaborate with different teams, right? So that we have collaboration going on with all the different teams. I think I already spoke about this: product marketing, customer success, field marketing. So there is a community presence in all of this, and in some sense, all these different teams are also trying to do similar things to what we are trying to do. Like, they're also trying to build a community around the product, they're also trying to build a community around a particular region, so they're running events. So there is a lot of overlap for sure. It can't be like, everything is black and white. There's a lot of gray area. So we need to get people who has that understanding. It can't be like zeros and ones, and you go back and say, okay, this is my territory and this is yours, and there is absolutely no common ground. It can never be that simple. So there's a lot of cross-functional collaboration, but the upside to that is, in my head, I think you get exposed to so many different things, like so many different, what do I say, like, you understand, like, how different teams are working, and you're exposed to different opportunities and different ways of working, which can potentially lead you to having a bigger pool to choose from. Like when you're thinking about taking the next step, you can actually think about, okay, I've been working very closely, let's say, with customer marketing, and I've been working very closely in terms of driving upsell and cross sell. And if you realize that that's where your interests are more aligned towards, then you can actually take a step. So I think the next slide talks about, like, it's a very simple slide, but it's just, if you simplify your career path, if you are in community organization, if you're a true community professional, and if you just want to go linear, I think it's pretty straightforward. I think everybody talks about this, starting out as a community moderator, and then you can slowly move up the ladder. Of course, you can get into community ops, you can get into like content, but I think title wise, you slowly have a linear growth to being like a director of community, whether it is an IC role or it's a people manager role. You slowly start building your team, and then I think now, luckily, like, we are seeing chief community officers, or even if it's rolling under chief customer officers. I think even CCO was probably not a thing. I don't know, like 10 years ago, chief customer officer was never a widespread thing in companies. But now, obviously, we are seeing that more and more in startups as well as in hypergrowth companies. But I think more interesting is to see how you can branch out into like other departments. Like, you have a leeway into customer success. You can potentially get into product marketing, and that is because you understand, with community being so centrally placed, you get a flavor of all these different teams. And again, we are very open to sort of letting people explore and seeing if they want to actually like try something new and venture into a different space. And this can definitely, I can tell that with 100% conviction that being in a community role will definitely give you that space to have a good understanding about all these different teams, and think about, okay, maybe I want to venture into product marketing, maybe I want to get into events entirely. So if you're starting out in community, I think that's the best space you can ask for, because you get to learn about everything. It's a good mix. It's like best of all worlds, to be honest.
This is lovely, and thank you for helping us to define this, because if you're working in a startup that's relatively small, roles are not defined, right? And as the organization grows and functions become more specialized, it can be difficult to understand, if you're a very growth oriented person, where you should spend more time in learning or potentially working more closely with. And so I love that you've given so many different options of potential career options, as well as sort of word mobility. And I would say, like, this career progression is really dependent on you being able to define that ROI and communicate that back within your organization, right? Whereas the potential career options could depend a lot on your working very closely with these cross-functional teams and showing success in the projects that you do with them, in addition to being able to communicate that. So thank you so much for defining this to us so clearly. Anything else? Any other comments on this before I wipe this off the screen?
No, I think that's pretty much like everything that I had on the deck. Yes.
Love that. Love that. Thank you, Anna. This is like super, super helpful. And if you all found this to be helpful, I missed some of the chat going on, but I'd love to get now a sense of your takeaways from Arbab and Anna as they were sharing. So pop that in the chat for us and help us understand what was like an aha moment, if any, from the things that they shared. I did want to give you guys some insight. Like, so for me, moving from the development space to my own startup, then my startup got acquired, and then so I was working for like a larger startup, and then I moved to Facebook. For me, some of the things that were key in terms of thinking about like this skill set that I need to play within the organization was really that I had never worked so closely with well-defined cross-functional teams, right? So I had my own startup. We were very small. There were 6 of us. Then larger startup where my startup got acquired, and there were teams. So there was a tech team, there was a marketing team, there was a sales team, and our community team had to work with everyone. But it was a real challenge, I think, to figure out the particular insights that were valuable to each one of those teams, and also get them to start working more closely together. Because once those functions start disaggregating as a startup, a hypergrowth startup grows, people stop talking to each other, right? And so there's not a holistic conversation. And that was a role that the community team got to play, because we had to pull everyone into a room and say, this is what's going on. This is what our users are saying. This is what they'd like to see. Here's how we can have a bigger impact and get everyone into the room. So that was an interesting, for me, managerial leadership skill set that I had to define, because instead of going to each team individually, we were able to pull everyone into a room. And I think that's the unique position that a community team has, right? You speak the language of every single one of your cross-functional teams. They don't even speak each other's language. So you're actually one of the ones that has a holistic sense of with every other team, and you get the closest picture of what's happening in the company or organization as a whole. So that's one thing I wanted to share. And then while at Facebook, my team was the community partnerships team, and I also worked on the faith partnerships team. So to put it in a very meta sense, it was my job to work with community leaders from who were leading different types of communities. So I had community leaders that had communities of 2-3 million people individually, and then I was their coach. So I wasn't necessarily running a community. I was just helping the people running the community run their communities more effectively on our platform. The intersection of my role, yes, a total meta, I mean, now we're meta, but total meta version of Facebook, and a meta version of my skills. So I had been a community, like a director of community and empathy at Sheroes. If you guys know Sheroes, I had my own startup. I had communities there. I did led communities at Sheroes, where I was director of empathy and partnerships, and then moved into Facebook. For me, the most compelling thing was this idea of how do we really influence the product of Facebook, right? So we have a tap into the users, right? So our community leaders are these mega users of Facebook and Facebook's family of apps, WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook groups. We have that line of sight on what people want and what we call people problems. So what are all the things that annoy you about Facebook groups? Like, tell us. And that was one of the things that I did as a coach. Then to have that line of sight and direct communication with the product teams at Facebook was fascinating. And I had never had so much connection. So what Anna talked about in terms of the connection to product marketing, or even just the product teams that are building the engineers, to be able to build empathy between those teams and the users, was a big part of what we did. And so the skills that I think that I had to learn, and a part of my own growth, was making sure I could speak the language of each of those teams on a much larger sense. I started to have to understand product timelines. I needed to understand what motivated engineers even in terms of their, there was like a semi-annual every 6 months performance review cycle, right? So, if it's not going to look good on their performance review, they're not going to do it for you. They're not going to build it for you. So we had to learn how to speak that language and get people what they needed. So anyway, just sharing a little bit about my background. I'm sure all of us can talk about this all day, but I skipped a question, and I'm glad that I skipped this question because I think now is the right time. Now, the 3 or 4 of us have had a lot of conversations about hiring community team members and how challenging that is in India right now, right? So you're growing a community team. It's difficult to find team members because everybody these days seems to have a community lead, community head, director of community title, but they're all doing different things, right? There's no one set of skills that everybody is coming to the table with because the sector is still pretty new for us, right? So I want to hear from both Anna and Arbab, and Neha, I know that you have some skin in the game here too, so I'd love to hear from you. What are you looking for when you hire team members? Give us like the top things that you look for. And then the second question is, what are you not finding right now? Where are the gaps? So let me ask Anna this. Anna, what are you looking for and where are the gaps?
I think this is probably the most difficult question. I think what am I looking for? I think fundamentally, I think even if you don't have experience, I think personally, I always look for people who have their hunger to learn and actually you just learn on the ground. I don't expect you to come with knowing everything about community building. And I've got people who've been a chartered accountant, and he's now building community with me. So it's like it can't get so it can't get disconnected than that. So we're only looking at people who can of course you need to have a basic understanding about the community and why, and you need to believe in it. You really can't get into this space, okay, it's just another job and then I'll just come and do what it takes. You really need to invest and believe in what you are doing. But there aren't any particular skills that you can't learn in the job. What am I not finding? I think, especially in India, it is very difficult to get people who've been there, done that. It definitely requires. I think that's where Arbab and what he's doing really helps, coaching people on how to look at community, how can you start building community for B2B tech space and whatnot. But that's probably one thing we are not getting enough. But I'm sure that's gonna slowly change because everybody is picking this sector is picking up much faster than I thought it would. And at the same time, there's so much learning. Like there's access to people in the valley. Like there's access to people like you, Avni. Like I'm sure people can reach out to you and talk about how have you done this in the past. So I think that is a good thing. So we are not at a disadvantage. I think we are definitely at an advantage of bringing in more new perspectives as a country, right? Like we're building products from India for the world, and I'm sure we'll also bring more perspectives into community building as well.
Arbab, what's your take?
Right. So first of all, I would like to make a statement. That statement is that Indians are natural community builders. Community is in their DNA. So the next phase of the community builders, you will see everywhere, like everywhere in India planet there are a community builder, but we are going to lead the community building space in next 10 years. That is for sure. That is my belief. So the first thing is that, right? But where we are lacking as a person, right? So two things I will see in a community builder. One is that person, how that person solve a problem. If I give them a problem, a unique problem, maybe emotional driven problem, or maybe the data driven problem, how that person solves that problem. And the second thing I'm looking toward is your growth mindset. If that person is capability to accept mistakes and improve via that feedback, themselves, right? So I look around two things. One is your growth mindset, and second is that problem solving ability. So these two things I am looking, I do not find in many community builder in India right now. Even if it is new, that it should be done. Like problem solving and growth mindset is two of the things which should be must in our community builder as well.
Neha, I know you have some thoughts about this too, and I'd love to pull you into this conversation.
I'd love to. I think, we're at a stage where I think all of us echo, and I've already spoken enough about the fact that, this area is growing, and I think there's so much excitement in the market today. And thanks to each one of us that we've been able to kind of really bring eyes and spotlight on what we're doing to the entire ecosystem out there. So I think that's great news. I think we have a lot more resources. I think we have a lot more people to reach out to, network, to learn from. And clearly, some events like these, right, these conversations are so important to have, where people who are just coming into this into this industry can learn so much from. Right. So a couple of things. Okay, just coming to your question, Avni, a couple of things that we typically look for, and I would typically look for in a community builder, apart from all that our panelists have already spoken about, is I think data driven approach. I think really, uh, if we are not going back and looking at how our community is behaving, what are some insights that we can draw from all the metrics that you're tracking, how and that's where you need to kind of really be very, very focused about where are you focusing on as a team. And I echo with what you were saying, Avni, and a couple of you, that we have to you know build our presence in the organization, and be very relevant to to something that an engineering person is doing there, right? So I think a data driven approach, and being able to kind of really communicate that approach to the organization, I think is so key in helping define what you do as a team. But I think really build your presence in the organization and let other teams sit up and listen to you. So I think that's a very, very important skill to have. And number two is collaboration, right? I think we are not, and again, a lot of you already echoed the sentiment is that we can't function as a standalone function. We have to constantly collaborate with a lot of teams out there. And I think having that bent of collaboration, because it's not easy to have that skill and build that skill, right? So if somebody has that mindset, I think that's really important. And number three is ops, right? It is not glamorous. This role also comes with rolling up your sleeves and doing that dirty work, right? So and that's and I today itself I saw somebody, I'm forgetting the name of the person, she actually said that the next hot thing today in community building space is community operations. And I so echo with that thought. And I think Ronald, who is my colleague back in Cora, will also echo with that right now, because she is in that space right now, doing some really impactful work there. So these are the three things, apart from all the other stuff that you've spoken about. Where we're struggling, I guess, is, I think, again, and it's a journey, right? This industry is growing in India. A lot of people are getting to know about it. A lot of organizations are getting excited about it. People want to kind of also, come up with glamorous titles to attract talent, because talent is tough to find, right? So there are a lot of, I just feel sad when people may not really be doing a community role but end up calling themselves as community managers, and that takes away a lot of time while you're kind of hiring for some of those roles out there. But I see an opportunity there too. It's an opportunity for us to kind of really help and coach and mentor some of those people who aspire to be community managers but may not necessarily have done some work around that. So I think it's onus on us. So yeah, sorry for my long spiel, but I was itching to speak, as you can clearly see. But yeah, some of the some of my thoughts, and really echo with all that all of you have said until now.
So I have tried to take these notes and the mic drop quotes from everyone, so all of you can take those away. I think we do plan on quickly summarizing this and putting up an article about the takeaways, but like these were key. Everyone shared like literally the things that we're looking for, but also the frustrations. I think for me, so I get approached by a lot of people who are either trying to break into the space or, recently like want to work for Meta and Facebook. And one of the things I have to tell them is you need to be able to truly be a politician. And I'm saying this in the nicest way possible. I think you touched on, Neha, being seen and convincing people within the organization. I think when I came into Facebook, I was told, "Oh, you're community lead in Facebook." That's not what my job was at all. I spent a lot of time making very poignant decks, talking to executives, figuring out the relationships I need to be successful, and building community internally. So yes, I had a whole portfolio of partners and we were creating programs externally, but I'd say 60 to 70% of my time was communicating internally, getting by, going to people and truly, like, for a social media platform, using our internal social media to communicate things, so that we could spend the additional 30 to 40% externally doing the things that we wanted to with our partners. It's not something that anyone told me about the job or working in the industry, but hyper growth organizations, tech organizations, this is required. And so if you are not a hustler, if you don't like connecting with people just for the sake of connecting, it's going to be very hard for you. And so start building those skills now. Everyone's dropped their LinkedIn. Please go and reach out to everyone that's been on this panel in the chat. Have some conversations, because as we connect to each other, as you connect to people within and outside of your organization, going to grow. And we are the people that are going to build together. And so I think, like, for me, that's like the lack that I see is like, you have a lot of people with the skill, like, I can answer a chat. I have the proper voice to be able to communicate with somebody, but you don't have the hustle to build the relationships internally to advocate for yourself and your function and your team. And so you're not going to grow. And so seeing that right off the bat, being able to deal with the conflicts in doing that, the problem solving that it takes to do that, because you have to, figure out what people want, right? Them is super key. And those were my big takeaways from Facebook. I had to learn that very quickly, and until I learned it, I was not very successful, but then I did okay. I learned that and then did very well. So this is of the formal portion of our panel discussion. I want to thank everyone because this is so open and so honest, like, as I like to say, some real talk. But I know we had a couple of questions from our audience. And so if we could go to those questions, I know that Renal had a question, Sam
Yes.
had a question.
Should I just I'll just call out the question that she has, and that question was to Arbab. She asks you how we should think about engagement strategies for niche communities that are more inclined towards a one-on-one interaction, such as investor relation communities. Again, I'll repeat how we should think about engagement strategies for niche communities that are more inclined towards a one on one interaction, such as investor relation communities.
So one-on-one means that her community is like it's not a group of people. Communication happen around one-on-one, like an investor and a startup founder or something like that.
I would assume so. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, that's right. She says, yes, that's right.
okay, that's right, right. So it's more like there's no group of people here, right?
Yes.
Let me think
Yes.
around that. Let me think around that because it's something very specific problem, right? So I haven't been into that space. So let me think around that. And
Anybody else in the panel who
yeah,
would like to give, if in case they have some insights?
I think Avni is.
I have a hot take on this, and it's actually Mrinal, some of what I just mentioned in terms of the things you need to do internally. So everyone's posting LinkedIn as a tool. It's a really good tool. Reach out to people and reach out to people for a connection, and there's some LinkedIn hacks. Tell them why and what you want to learn from them. So not like, hey, I'd like to connect with you. I hate that. Tell me why. Like, who are you and why do you want to connect to me? That's why I'm not on LinkedIn anymore, guys, honestly. Tell me who you are and why you want to connect to me, where you think there might be collaboration or synergies, and request a 15-minute discussion. I would love 15 minutes of your time to get to know you and ask a couple of questions that I have about X or Y thing. And you need to build a personal relationship with people very quickly, right? Don't waste time emailing back and forth. Be very specific about an ask and then start doing that like Monday mornings, send out 100 messages to people and then schedule to have these 15-minute conversations in blocks. You need to automate it and then make sure that you're documenting all the results of all these conversations and always follow up. So for people who are potentially like all of us that are involved in this conversation, you get a lot of requests very frequently with very fuzzy like reasons for wanting to connect. If you're really specific, I will give you my time. I will be glad to give you my time. But if you can't articulate to me why, then it's really hard for me to schedule out and carve out that time. And I people are more than happy to do that. There's also tools and platforms like Lunch Club. Lunch Club is just because they're advertising to me. Lunch Club is like a one-on-one connection tool that you can use. There's even Bumble BFF, which is like Bumble's a dating app, but there's a mode called BFF where you can meet other people for professional networking. There's an app called Vina. There's organizations like CMX. There's founders organizations. There's like Head Start and Startup Saturday and all that other kind of stuff. Get active in communities like that so you can meet people and just be real specific with your ask and ask for time. You send out 100 messages, I don't know, 20 people will get back to you. And then you'll actually be able to schedule conversations with 10. So this is a numbers game. As you cultivate those relationships with people, stay in touch with them, thank them for the conversation, tell them what you learned, keep filling them, find and be able to grow those individual connections really strongly. And then just like super, oh yeah, and Manny's solving this problem with Mensa. And so you can check out the tool and the organization that he works for that could help with that. And Myrtle's saying, so you actually do a ton of cold outreach and do 15 minutes call right now. And yeah, I say just like this is like something that needs to be scheduled in your day and prioritized throughout the week. Automate it, like make it a Monday or what. Send out all your requests and then have 2 days a week when you're scheduling these conversations. And now, if you're able to meet face to face, and since you're in Bangalore, I'm going to tell you come to HSR. or Mangala show up at the Chayus, depending, the Starbucks is for the rich startups, the Chayus is for the ones that are pre-raise. Park yourself there because everyone's having conversations there. So when I was a startup founder, what I would do is there was a specific Chayus in Delhi at SDA Market. Arbab would know this one, where it's right across from IIT Gate. So all of the IIT meetings with potential investors and stuff at that Chayus, I would sit there and I would do my work. But anytime I heard a conversation where I thought that I could be a part of because people were loud, I would introduce myself and say, hey, I'm Avni, this is what I'm doing. I run this platform called Love Doctor. I would really love to take your advice because I heard what you were saying and it was really fabulous. Do you have time for a tea right now? It's on me, or can we meet later? And it worked. So I think being that proactiveness and digitally it's great, but now I think people are craving for that face-to-face connection. I have a lot of strong opinions about this, so I'm just going to be quiet. But I'm sure everyone else has their own methodology for this, but that's what I do.
So I understand the question right now. So earlier I was thinking like that you are talking about you are a community enabler and how you can do that. Now I understand a question. So according to me, there are two ways you can do that. First way, they outreach to you and they reach out to you, and the second way, you reach out to them, as Avni mentioned, right? So in order to they reach out to you, you have to provide the value which they are interested in. Maybe that you are talking about some data, maybe you're talking about you're creating some sort of post, something about marketing, something about companies and all those things, portfolios and all those things, right? So you need to figure out that content, what is that content, and for that you have to become the enabler of the community. It means that you yourself start posting on the community. I see that a lot of businesses, due to the posting on that community, it happens. And one more thing, one of my mentee was in Bangalore, and he was using one of very funny kind of trick. So he used to go to office by Uber, and he always pick Uber, which is like on sharing basis. So he meet a lot of share people in Uber, and he talk about his business about around that in that Uber, and he met a lot of people around that. Maybe it might be possible that your targeted audience is not that, but there, but you can talk a lot of that it's a long journey in Bangalore. You can actually make your co-founder while you're in a way to your office, right? So you can use that, but certainly the certain thing I can say that a lot of people go to offline events to make network, right? So in the name of making networking, right? So I somehow find this idea, I somehow find did not that worked well for me. So I never go for that make as say that networking. I go to that event to talk to people, to communicate to the people, to communicate my idea, to listen to their idea, right? So for the sake of communication, there will be little bit of selfishness that you can show, but when you talk about ideas, it is something which is very which is very on organic level, right? So I would say that go to offline event as well, but not for the sake of networking, but for the sake of conversation will make you network. So that's what I want to I want to add.
We had some more questions. If you can cover them quickly, I'm just mindful of everybody's time too. Somebody was asking, sorry, I think I missed the question somewhere. Yeah, Abhilash asks, what are some of the best community tech tools that you use? Any quick inputs? He's asking this question of everyone, whoever can give an insight.
Right. So Avni can tell about this more, right? So we have a mutual friend who is also building a community tool. I'm using that community. Avni can tell us about that very well.
I will give a political answer, and I'll only say that all of the platforms have pros and cons. So, like, know your enemy and know the cons and go into them willingly. use Bevy. I worked for Meta/Facebook. Facebook groups was a big part of that, WhatsApp groups, but it had its limitations. And so I was very clear with it. Here are the opportunities, here are the limitations. It depends on what downside, like what is the downside that you cannot bear, right? And so I would just say there's a deeper conversation here about like what is a non-negotiable for you, and after that we can talk about platform specific.
Right. And just give me a moment. There was a question from Samid who asks, what's your advice revolving around community to someone who's getting into the startup space? He was specifically asking this of Avani.
I feel like all of us can answer this question. So Sam, I'll answer this for sure, but I want to offer it because Anna's been very early stage at Freshworks. Arbab has started upskill and grown that. And so I think, Neha, you've seen Quora and you've seen how it's grown. So I'd love to just get your take on from any of the organizations that you've worked in, since we all have some startup experience.
I think I want to just say, know your members, know your customers, and then start building, and not build something and then take it to your customers and expect them to adopt it, because that's definitely not going to work. So we actually did a lot of, I blogged. I mean, I was smiling because you spoke about the 15-minute blogs. I did a lot of that with our customers, literally like asking them, okay, we're doing this. What is your expectation? What do you want to see, what do you not want to see? So I think that is definitely the fundamental thing to do, especially if you're starting out. And I think even in a startup, if you're in tech space, that's going to help you get to product market fit even sooner, right? Because you're asking and then using them as design partners and then building the product. So that's going to help you hit your PMF much more sooner as well. So I think talking to your members, talking to your customers, understanding is crucial.
So I want to add that I have experience with a startup around 8 years. So I have been all my life I have been working in a startup. So a lot of thing depends upon that. What is the stage of that startup? Is there an opportunity for community in that startup? Not all the startup have that opportunity. Some are pure product based. There is no opportunity for that. So you need to understand this thing as well, right? So the first thing is that then conversation, as Anna says, that whatever she says, that it's truly it's a basic, very that foundation of that thing, right? Now one more thing I want to I want to add a story of me being in a startup. So last startup I was working before being a founder, so it was a startup which is into rented space. Rented space means that it's like you can come with 2 bags and everything they will give, right? So it was that, right? So I have designed something for them which unfortunately I was not able to apply. So it's a rented space, and the space where you live is a very personal thing. It's a very personal thing, right? So here there is an opportunity of creating a multiple community, then connecting that community as well throughout the Delhi NCR. So I have designed something key. Okay, so community based on region, community based on that interest. For example, we will take an entire house. We will have only students there, and in that house we will give a library who is preparing for something for that, right? There will be a Bengali kind of thing, and the food will, whatever food is there, it will be made around Bengali food, right? And then we created this small cohort. I designed this small cohort, and then we are going to connect all those cohort together with something like gamification of that competition, something like that. We are going to create it. We are going to build that, and that was going to one of the very big USP for our renting space as well. But unfortunately, I was not able to do it. But if there is an opportunity, you can do bigger thing like that. If I was able to do that, that would be a very that very unique combined community kind of thing environment is there, right? So I do not know execution can lead that it can be positive, it can be positive, but according to my calculation, it can be very good thing. So Why I'm sharing this story? Because there is an opportunity of creating community. Not everywhere there is an opportunity of creating community. So you need to understand this as well.
Nia, do you have a there's
Yes.
there's a point in your in your eyes. I wonder.
So, plus one obviously to everything that all of you have said. Just a couple of additions from my side. I think purely when you're wearing a community hat, forget about everything else at this point in time. But I think number one is be very authentic, right? People love that when you're building a community. If you're showing authenticity, you're showing empathy, you're listening to them, I think they absolutely love it. Number two is show them quick wins. Show them, so for example, what this means is if there was some feedback from them, and if that kind of fits into your your plan for the community, and if you're able to show them some quick wins, people will love you. uh, Number three is have conversations, as Anna said, right? If you're starting up, I think even if it means 10 people and not 100, that's not relevant, because finding those really important 10 relevant people who will stick around your community and spread the word about your community is very important. And it's a tough thing to get as well, right? How do you identify, where do you identify those people, how do you reach out to them, how do you break that ice, right? So but then that's absolutely important and very key, because if you've done that nicely and correctly, I think they will stick around your community for the longest time and will be your biggest advocates, will do half your work. Honestly, they will sit and coach other users, they will answer questions on your behalf, and they will give you feedback, and they will be there to hold the flag for you, and face the flag at times as well. There's so many community people in my community who actually, when you do get a lot of flack from the community as a community builder as well, and they're there to kind of really fight it out for me, and that's a great position to be in. So yeah, a couple of things that I think you should be thinking about when you're starting up um, with your community.
Yes, I'm plussing 1,000 to everything everyone said. I want to mention a couple of things that are more feelings related, because play in. There were two things. So when we were starting to build the first 30 communities at Sheroes. So I used to work at Sheroes. Okay, so it's basically a community of women's communities. We were thinking about two things, and there were some non-negotiables that we discovered in terms of building a team and getting these first 30 communities to start rolling. So the first non-negotiable is that there needed to be a minimum amount of content going up in these communities. And it was an arbitrary number. It was like 100 posts should go up in these communities every single day. And now, in the beginning, Arbab also mentioned, like, sort of this idea that you could be putting in a certain amount of effort for those posts, but eventually the community could run itself. So the hack here was that once people came into the community, even if it was one new person or two new people, because your customer acquisition at first is going to be really slow, right? Once they saw the community rolling, they wanted to be a part of it. So everyone wants to be a part of a rolling community with momentum. That's my first thing to tell you. Eventually, we didn't have to post at all. We posted 5 times, but because people started generating that content for us. I think the second thing is that voice is non-negotiable here. And so as you're thinking about the values of your community, the people that are working to build the community with you, your community team members, if they can't speak to people in the proper way, because people don't remember what you say, they remember how you make them feel. So if people aren't coming away from your community feeling in a very specific way, which typically should be positive, I mean, you don't want people coming into any community that you build feeling crappy. That was very hard to train for. But when we were very strict on hiring people, okay, if you got the voice, I can train you to run the community and be a community manager. Trained myself, personally trained, probably 50 community managers this way. And then making sure that people within the community adhered to that voice. So we were very strict when there was meanness or disrespect or racism, sexism, any of that stuff. And because we were strict with that, the quality of the community was always superb. People felt safe within the community, and then more people started joining, right? This is a place where I can talk. This is a place that I belong to. I want to be a part of this because they felt good. So I'd say those are a couple of things to think about. The last thing I want to say is, if it drains your energy to do any function that you're playing, and I know that this is very hard because sometimes we wear all of the hats, right? But if it drains your energy, people will feel that. So you better find somebody really quick who can do the thing that can drain your energy, plan for that, and know what drains your energy from the beginning, because otherwise it's gonna leak out. It definitely leaks, and there's something energetic that people can feel. So know where your deficiencies are, know what gives you energy, focus on that, and then try to outsource everything else eventually to people who can derive the same energy. Then you have people working on things that get energy from those functions. Like, we mentioned ops. Ops is super important, but not everybody is an ops person. And so if you are the front-facing community person that has the connection skills that can make people feel like they're a part of something, and you need an ops person by your side, don't get bogged down in the ops. Make the case for what that resourcing will do to lift up any sort of type of impact that you want to have. And I got a direct message. So people were asking me why I'm not on LinkedIn. And I just want to say, guys, LinkedIn wasn't always there. How did we build connections with people prior to LinkedIn? We talked to people and, hey, who do you know that's I don't know. If let's say you're building a platform for astrologers, which one of us probably, hey, do you know really good astrologers? And you ask everybody you know. You talk to 5 astrologers, you buy them that tea, and then you ask them, who are other astrologers that I should talk to? So there's an old school way of doing this that works very effectively. LinkedIn isn't there because this way was ineffective. LinkedIn just helps to scale that, but understand your return on investment for doing things the old school way and using LinkedIn. And I would say this, a connection on LinkedIn isn't a real relationship. So be very clear. You may have 10,000 connections, but be very honest with yourself about how many of those things are real relationships and focus on those, grow those. Shouting into a void is not connection making. It's not community building. Interacting with people, going deep with them, listening to them, being there for them is community building. And so know the difference between those two things. And so LinkedIn is a great tool, but understand the limitations of it and understand how to get around those limitations, if that makes sense. Know what gives you energy and what doesn't give you energy, and you will flow through your community journey. I want you all to feel like you are in flow. This should feel good. It should feel good in your soul.
I totally resonate with this last point, Avani, right? Because we are today stuck in this era where everybody is on these various social media channels. Sorry, I think my internet is unstable. Are you able to hear me now? Okay. And a lot of us actually feel the pressure to be on them and to do something there, right? And I think over a period of time, and I think it's beginning to happen, right, where we're going to go back to the drawing board and see what's relevant for me, right? What is draining? I think what you say is so relevant. What is draining my energy? you know uh, 10 others may be doing something on LinkedIn, but is that something worth my energy? And if it isn't, then am I doing it right? Right? Or do I need to do it at all? So there are so many questions that we need to ask ourselves, given in this. And I think it's just exacerbated by the fact that we are now so much more remote thanks to Corona, that we feel this pressure and need to be there and be seen because we're not being seen physically. Right. So it's a very tricky thing to get right, and I think we should keep talking about all of this, right, sharing with each other, so that we don't feel that pressure. So thanks so much for bringing that up, Avni.
Do we have any other questions from people who are listening or in the chat? We more minutes of everyone's time, but I also realize it's Saturday and some of us are not on lockdown and may want to go out into the world. Any last questions for all of these wonderful experts here?
I think
Type it out.
Satyam had asked, and it's a larger,
Yeah.
it's a session in its own self, and a bunch of sessions, not just one, which is how to start building up the community, right? I think a bunch of us already spoke about that. Like, this is what we touched upon that already. So I think, Satyam, I hope that you found that useful. And in case you want kind of deeper insights, feel free to reach out to any of us that you think will be able to add a lot of value to the question that you have in mind.
We did want to talk about what's unique to India. That's been peppered through this conversation. I do think maybe now this deserves its own space. Talk about the Indian context and where we are now. A couple of things that I heard was just like focusing on empathy and diplomacy as a cultural value because people really thrive under that. The like promotion of people who have played certain functions, so we're kind of at a space where it's very chicken and egg. You need community team members, but not a lot of people have that deep experience. And so we're training people up and trying to look for it. That we have a strong legacy of natural community and history. All of us know what good community feels like, I hope, right? And so we can bring that into our work. And I made some other notes. You need to be able to cultivate and develop the skill of being a squeaky wheel within your organization and speaking up for the value that you're creating. And so what's unique in the Indian context is there's still not a lot of agency to do that. So we still need to hustle a little bit more to do that with this market. And then once you do that, you can grow throughout your career pathway, either upward into other functions if you're sort of in a hyper growth organization, for sure. And then there are additional contexts which probably deserve another session about independent community creators, right? Influencers, creators, and the like, who are building communities on their own based on a voice, based on something that they're creating culturally. And that's a whole different business model, a whole different set of conversations that we heard that probably needs a little bit more air. So I hope I summarized that. Anything else stick out to you guys about Indian context that we can mention briefly?
Summarized it well, and thank you so much for talking about that, because I was so keen on that discussion to happen in this session. So I thank you so much for taking note and remembering and bringing that flavor to this discussion. And I think it will not stop here. These discussions need to keep happening, and these more of these India-based sessions, India-based experts and people who are kind of doing so much more around community need to get together in conversations like these. So I have actually taken notes of so many topics that we can think about and who to kind of really pull in already. So that's going to be very exciting. I'm sure 2022 is going to be super exciting for CMX India. But thank you so much um, Avani, Arbab, and Anna for this really amazing session. Extremely insightful. Imagine we're here for the past 2 hours and we still have a bunch of us still sticking around and really loving this conversation. So, and thank you so much for all the participants. I mean, all the community builders out there. A huge applause to all of you. The fact that you care about the fact that you've joined today shows how much you care about doing what you do. And thank you so much for being such an interactive audience. This kind of conversation is just amazing. I am still not feeling it. It's 2 hours already.
Neha and team, I have like a ritual that I like to do at the end of everything.
Yes,
And
please.
so
Love
pop your
rituals.
favorite emoji or phrase into the chat. Let's leave with some gratitude for this session and for learning from each other. Any good feeling thing that you like, we'll pop it into the chat box. And like super excited to continue the conversation with you all, and we'll feel all the love that we're all sending to each other in the chat right now.
It really was so insightful. Doesn't feel like 2 hours. We're almost at the 2 hour mark, and it just doesn't feel like that. And I'm sure if we all have time, we will still keep talking so much more. So definitely calls for another session.
Absolutely. Anna, are you currently hiring? Arbab, Anna, Neha?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So plug for our 3 leaders at these wonderful organizations. If you're interested and would like to be a part of what they're doing, what you need to do to get on their radar. So make sure to line that up and then reach out to these wonderful folks if you would like to take a step in your career.
Yeah, I'm plugging my LinkedIn once again. So
Yeah, me too.
So putting my LinkedIn, if somebody is in NFT space, please ping me. Hiring for an NFT space.
We are hiring for a community manager for our Malayalam community. A very unique opportunity. At Quora, we actually have 24 languages and 24 unique communities as a result. So it's a very exciting space to be in. Not a lot of organizations are doing this, and I think there's a huge learning opportunity there. So yeah, more if you want to connect with me. Obviously, you need to kind of know Malayalam and be proficient in it and be able to write, literally type in Malayalam. So that's a note. But yeah, we're definitely hiring, and we have a couple of other roles for community managers. One is a Hebrew community manager, and the other one, which will come up very soon as well. Again, another language. So if you know somebody who you can connect us to, would love to get references.
I know people for Hebrew.
Yay, okay.
Binoj is from Kochi. All right, beautiful. Look at all these connections happening in the chat right now. Binoj,
This is amazing.
this is great.
Totally talking to you, Vinoj.
Awesome. All right, shall we wrap? Happy Saturday, everybody. Please stay safe, go out and enjoy the world safely and socially distanced, but not distanced from the heart. We hope to see you soon, and connect with us if you have any other questions or conversations that are pending or things going in your mind. Let us know.
Lovely. Thank you so much. I just don't feel like going.
so
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.